There's a car that we drive in this thing that I had to ask the person who brought the car to us. I was like, how much does this car cost? And the guy said upwards of $800,000. And I was like, that is bonkers. And then I got in it. I was like, oh, that's really nice.
It's kind of cool, right?
Really, really
it would
nice.
Make me too nervous.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so my wife just thinks it's too showy.
Too showy, no? Is that why you don't wear a wedding ring?
You gonna buy the watch or you gonna analyze me?
I can do both at the same time. I'll give you 65 for it.
Lipschitz was gonna give me 185.
Then he sent you to me. You could sell it legit, you wouldn't be here.
95.
We don't get men like you in here very often. You're what, a trader, stockbroker, whatever. The point is, you're a man who buys and sells things he never touches. You assign value out of your... Your skill is in selling that value to other rich schmucks. Now here you are selling me something you can hold in your hand. This is new to you. You don't understand this market, but you still think you can negotiate it. That's not savvy, that's stupidity.
Maybe it's just desperation.
That's the first honest thing you've said. Now we can do business. I'll give you 60.
Welcome to the actor's side. I have been waiting a long time to have him on the actor's side. I don't know. He goes through all these shows, and I go, can we do Jon Hamm? And they go, yeah, but he's out of town. He's shooting something else. So I missed him on Fargo. I missed him on The Morning Show. I missed him on so many movies and Top Gun. I've got him here, and I'm so happy to have you, Jon Hamm. Welcome to the actor's side.
Finally. Yes, finally. Well, you know, you and I have known each other forever. So
Forever.
I think we're going on 20 years at least.
It was Mad Men before it was on the air.
So that would have been 2004, 2005, so 20 years.
That's a long time. We were doing Q&As for this show that nobody had seen.
But you were an early adopter. I'm forever grateful for that.
Oh, I was, and I knew that was going to be something. First of all, Mad Men was such an interesting idea that nobody'd done in television.
Yes, it was. They said it couldn't be done. They said no one's going to want to watch a show about advertising, and I said, well, there was 30-something, but anyways. But so, yeah, that was 20 years ago. It's 10 years ago since it went off the air, Mad Men, and I can't believe both of those numbers are accurate, but here we are. I'm glad to be sitting here talking to you.
So 10 years since it's gone off, and now you are back for the first time doing a regular television series with Apple, Your Friends and Neighbors.
Yes.
Which is so addictive, I have to say. It really is.
That's on purpose. We're very happy with how the first season came out. Apple seems to be very happy as well because they picked us up for a second season. Jonathan Draper, who created the show, he's the head writer on, had a great idea. And it's sort of like an observation on what this crazy collection of wealth does to people. And I think for obvious parallels and obvious reasons that the show is particularly resonant at a time like this, when you've got, the world's richest man taking a chainsaw to government and putting half of the middle class out of work. So there's a lot of things to and parallels to really be gleaned from it, but it's done artfully. It's done, as you say, addictively. It's funny. But it has a lot to say, and that's what attracted me to it.
And it's a great role to see you in. He wrote it. Jonathan Draper wrote it for you. I talked to him, and he said he had you in his head, and he went to his agent to hook you up for a lunch or something to actually get you to agree, and then he went out and wrote it.
Yeah.
That's a huge compliment for an actor.
Tremendous. It had never happened to me, and so I thought, well, that's first of all, it's, as you say, it's an amazing compliment, but it doesn't matter if what comes out of the meeting and comes out of the exercise is not very good. Right. So when Jonathan gave me the script, I thought, well, this is really good. The first episode is tremendously compelling. It really sets this whole world in motion, and you see this guy make the first of a series of bad decisions that lead him further and further astray. And of course, there's there's a little bit of a time jump backwardsness to it as well that I'll let people discover on their own from a narrative standpoint. But it's exciting, it's compelling television, it's sexy, it's funny, it's those things that we look for in television. But it also has a story that has something to say and has a completion at the end. It's satisfying at the end. Rich people behaving badly feels like is a bit of a genre at this point, whether it's White Lotus or The Perfect Couple or however you want to put it. But there's something, I think, from an audience standpoint, really satisfying to find my character, especially as someone that you can identify with in some way. Most people don't have to worry about their $300,000 mortgage or their $250,000 car. Yeah. But people can all identify with, I think, especially now more than ever, losing their job and not being able to make whatever they have to make, and the people that depend on them not going without.
Right.
And I think that's a big concern for a lot of people, and that's the jumping off point where we tell us.
That's why when you started shooting this, maybe a year ago, whenever you started this, it's become so much more timely right now. I mean, the zeitgeist sometimes happens.
Sometimes it works that way. We saw it with Mad Men. When we set Mad Men in 1960, the year that Kennedy and Nixon were going on, and what was happening that year, it was Obama and McCain. There was a inflection point in the country, and you look at it in 2016 with The Handmaid's Tale. What was going on? And what Trump was ascendant, and The Handmaid's Tale was kind of right on the cusp of that. Sometimes it happens that you have these fortunate confluences of timeliness and culture, and everything seems to lead the discussion towards this topic.
Well, it starts with another scene. I won't say what that is, but when it starts, basically, we see you in the high rises. You're going strong, hedge funds, all of that world, and you think, well, he's gone back a little bit to the Mad Men kind of thing, except in a different time period. But that, boy, stops quickly when we watch. It was not just your career and losing your job, your family, your wife. You're now split up, and
it sets up this idea of, and it is an interesting parallel when you bring up Mad Men, because if Don Draper was in charge of sort of selling the American dream, well, Andrew Cooper is very much in charge of buying it.
Yeah.
That's his lot in life. And you see, it's brilliantly executed and brilliantly written. You see him saying, this is what you do. You do this that leads to this. You do this that leads to this. And all of these things serve to, you go to the right school, you get the right job. You get the right job, you get the right boss. You get the right boss, you get the right wife. You get the right wife, you get the right house.
Yeah.
And then that's how it's supposed to play. And then one person pulls a peg out of it and the whole Jenga thing falls down, and it's through no fault of your own. But here you are back to square one and everything's gone. And then what do? I think that's resonant to a lot of people right now, because they feel like they're in a situation that they did not help create.
Yeah.
That was thrust upon them for whatever reason. And they're looking for an answer.
Yeah. It's interesting. I read a review of it the other day, and the first paragraph, I'm going like, oh my God, this is exactly what I was thinking in a way. It's like John Cheever, John Updike. It's The Swimmer. It's, Burt Lancaster going from home to home. Very different story. But nevertheless, learning different things about his neighbor. You learn about the neighbors as you go.
And what he thought, learning about himself.
Yeah.
What he kind of had sort of blocked or hidden or whatever. It's a fascinating film, and it's a really interesting comparison that you make. But yeah, that's the kind of thing where it's like, take a closer look. We certainly had a version of that in Mad Men, where right. You're like, pull the curtain back just a little more and you can really see what's going on. I think that's kind of happening right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. I also love about this show, the style of it. So when you're stealing something that you think these neighbors are never going to miss, and they probably wouldn't, these Rolex watches and things, it has a Home Shopping Network kind of description on the screen, which I haven't seen, but I thought that was fun.
A very interesting approach, and that was very much baked into the script. But in the execution of it, Craig Gillespie, who was directed the first two episodes,
he did movies like I, Tonya and Lars and the
Cruella, Lars and the Real Girl. I worked with him on a little movie called $1 Million Arm,
which was a great movie, by the way. Disney did that one.
Yeah, great movie. So I knew Craig. I knew he had a really deft hand at massaging kind of the tone of a story and not letting it get too saccharine and not letting it get too over the top in any of the other directions. And I knew he would establish a really cool look for the show as well. And he works fast. So I was like, this is where we are in TV. Like, we got to go. So those little sort of product placement bites that exist in the show, we're not too far from that, really. When you start watching something on Amazon and you click a button, it'll go through what's on the screen and say, you can buy this shirt, you can buy this car, you can buy this thing, you can buy this mixer, you can buy this, stovetop tea kettle.
Oh yeah, there's interactive TVs for that.
It's
you just
crazy.
do it.
So part of it is a little bit of a riff on that, and part of it is just highlighting the absurdity of the wealth that these people have acquired. And as we go through the season, we realize that, again, pulling the curtain back, that there's a lot more going on in these houses and in these bedrooms than it meets the eye. It all looks very perfect and well manicured and well maintained, but it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
And the cost isn't necessarily what they paid for there's a car that we drive in this thing that I had to ask the person who brought the car to us. I was like, how much does this car cost? And the guy said upwards of $800,000. And I was like, that is bonkers. Like, I don't understand. Like, that somebody would. And then I got in it. I was like, that's really nice.
It's kind of cool, right?
Really, really
it would
nice.
make me too nervous.
Absolutely. But I was just like, wow. There are $250,000 watches. There are, jewelry that's 6 and 7 figures. And you just think, how much is too much? And are we defined by these larger and larger and larger piles of stuff that we acquire? And maybe are we focusing on the wrong thing to put the emphasis on?
I love some of the character touches for your character too, where he lives. So there's a poster of Psycho on the wall, and there's another Hitchcock Vertigo on the floor, not hung up. I collect posters like that, and I'm going like, oh, and then he's always watching some black and white movie at TCM and things. And I thought that was such an interesting character touch. Tells you a lot about this guy.
Well, yeah, there's part of it is obviously he is in a very fluid point in his life. He hasn't had time to hang all of his stuff on the wall.
I love that.
But he also, he watches a lot of the Criterion channel, but he also likes, Bloodsport and Commando. So I think for Coop, and I think this was, again, very on purpose from Jonathan's creative standpoint, movies are his happy place, which there are for a lot of us, me too. And you can find comfort and escape in the greatest of all of that in the movies. And I think that was a nice way for us to let the audience know that, like, Coop's not just this guy who is craven and whatever. He has an artistic side. He has a creative side too. He wants to be a good dad. He wants to do the right thing. It just doesn't always make the right decision.
No, that really, doing those little touches, can make all the difference in
humanizes it, right? Of course.
And you see it there without like hammering it on the viewer, which I love. I love that stuff. And the cast is to die for here. They're really good. The woman that you're fencing, that you're selling your stuff to is amazing, that actress.
Randy Danson.
Yeah, fantastic.
She's wonderful. I knew her from Broadway. Amanda Peet is wonderful.
She's back.
Who I'd known for forever. I've probably known Amanda for the better part of 20 years and friends with her husband, Jason. And so, we have so many friends in common, but I've never had a chance to work with her. And I pitched her and said, would you do this? I think you'll have a good time on it. And she thankfully said yes. Olivia Munn the same way. Olivia and I've been friends with John Mulaney, her husband, for probably close to 15 years. First time I hosted Saturday Night Live. It's a really pleasant group that's very believable, that are all very adept with the comedic side of this as well as the dramatic side of it. Lena Hall, who plays my sister, super duper wonderful Broadway actress. She came to everybody's recognition in Hedwig and the Angry Itch.
Oh yeah.
Inch.
Oh God, yeah. I saw her on Broadway in that. Yeah.
She's a beautiful musician and plays my sister. And it was really important that we find somebody that's believably looks like we could be related, which I think she does.
I like the fact that character is the only one that calls you Andy.
Yeah.
The rest call you Coop.
Yeah. And we found that beautiful balance of how do siblings talk to each other, especially adult siblings. You know, there's clearly a history there, and there's clearly an emotional commitment and context and connection to each other. And, you know, it's not a spoiler, but her character is going through some mental health issues and needs her big brother. And so it's just another version of like, here is another person who Coop has to be responsible for. And it's another, you know, kind of straw on top of the camel, and you're kind of waiting to see how well can this camel hold up.
There was a line, I mentioned it to Jonathan Tropper, there's a line at the end, towards the, not the end, but because I haven't seen the end yet, I'm still waiting. But anyway, it sort of sums up the themes. It's not yours if you can't keep it. That's sort of the American dream there.
Some version of it for sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, it was sort of, it was preceded, I think, in the script by a line where he says, your mistake was thinking that any of this was ever really yours.
Yeah. Right.
And that's really kind of what the show is trying to kind of make us all really take a look at. You know, is this the important stuff? Right. Don Draper's character might say that, you know, our job is to create the artificial itch that can only be scratched by this object that you think you need. But is that really the important thing, or is the emotional connections and the relationships that you build and you tend to over the years, is that what it really is? And that's Coop's journey.
I love seeing you on the big giant IMAX screen in movies like Top Gun, Maverick, and that. You're just a movie star. You really are. You have that. And especially playing opposite Tom Cruise, that was a hit for no good reason. It was a hit. But you're spending a lot of time in television now, and got 2 Emmy nominations last year for Fargo and for Morning Show, and dropping into these limited series characters. Do you enjoy that more than trying to find the perfect movie script? That's so hard these days, I know.
It's an interesting time for the features, and I don't think I'm the only person to come up with this, you know, observation. I think movies are trying to figure out what's next right now. If you look at CinemaCon, if you look at what's going on, it very much seems like an industry that is trying to figure out what's next. I think it was either Ted Sarandos or Adam Aron from AMC who said, you know, like, if you look at all these things that it's easy to point at the pandemic and say that's the problem. Right. The pandemic was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And all the other things that were live in-person experiences, whether it's sports or live music, concerts, what have you, all of those have come back. The movies haven't. And it's like, why? Other than Top Gun, other than, you know, these big explosions at once every couple of months.
Top Gun brought it back.
Top Gun very much reminded everybody that, like, you know what's really fun?
Yeah.
Seeing something on the biggest screen you possibly can and seeing it in a full theater and eating popcorn and laughing and crying and feeling all the feels. Yeah. That was really fun. It's just that I think that the pipeline has dried up a little bit for those stories. There's no such thing as a $25 million movie anymore. There's really no such thing as a rom-com anymore. That Anyone But You was a huge success because there was nothing there.
I know.
It was it filled a vacuum in the market. Yeah. So you look at all these things and what's happening, and I think that the studios are trying to figure out what their job is now. Right. What their job is to provide the consumer. Is it supposed to be are you supposed to have more comfortable seats in the theater? Are you serving dinner and drinks? I don't think it's that. I think it's just make movies that people want to go and spend $100 and get a babysitter and do the whole thing and go out and see that. Television, I think, has a lower point of entry. It's easier to invest $10 or $15 million in a series and see where it goes. And now it's become an international game. If you look at what Squid Game did, if you look at what Adolescence did, if you look at what these shows that are coming from every corner of the world, and they're easy to watch. You just hit a button and you can watch. In the old days, we had to trade DVDs of Borgen and all these things. That, have you seen The Killing yet? You got to check this out.
Yeah, that's true.
Now it's everything everywhere all at once. You can just press a button. So
I just heard Netflix has added like something like 30, 40 more languages to their menu.
and by
language
the way,
menu.
good for them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they get it. They get it that it's a consumer-driven model. So I think that that's, to your original question, I think that that's part of why I've been able to really find, from a creative standpoint, the things that interest me are mostly in television. And, you know, if you can look back over my career, which I know you know
Yeah.
probably better than me, but over the course, I've jumped around on all of these things since I started, since I had the ability to, whether it's Black Mirror in 2010, before anybody really knew Black Mirror.
I have it all written.
Or just think, you know, I was an early adopter of Fargo. Noah and I worked together on Legion. We had done a feature together, and when the time was right and he had a part for me, he
He's
said,
in the sky.
let's do that. Yes, indeed, with Natalie Portman. I think that there's something to be said for stringing together these jobs that are meaningful to you. If that's your true north, you're probably going to get to your destination. If you're the person, if you're chasing what's going to be the next big thing, and I need to do a doctor thing because doctor things are big now, and you know the pit's big, so I got to go do a ER kind of. You go, no, it's got to be what you want to do, right. and then you populate it with people that you believe in.
That's what this show is. I mean, there's no question. You look at this show and you go like, my wife said to tell you, she said, just tell him I really love this show. And she's tough. She'll turn on something for 5 or 10 minutes and say, no.
Yeah.
And, you know, it caught her right away. And now she always said, did you get the last episode?
We'll have to get those to you.
But it's great. But when you mention your films here, you know, when you play Don Draper, that becomes so ingrained in people, and it's hard for actors sometimes to get out of it. You did a picture called The Town,
yeah,
which was completely a different supporting character, but nevertheless with Ben Affleck, that made people forget Don Draper.
And the reason I did that was I had seen Ben's first feature, Gone Baby Gone, in Deauville, of all places. So I saw it on a big screen,
yeah,
with a festival audience, and I thought, whoa, this guy's really good at this. That's a great story. It's told beautifully, narratively, but also the look of it, the filmmaking capacity of it, quality. He had beautiful department heads and director of photography and costumes and everything else. Casey was wonderful in it. Morgan Freeman's amazing in it. And you could tell, like, Ben knew too. He had worked with Morgan Freeman on Changing Lanes. He worked with his brother before. He knew how to populate that project with people who he trusted, people who he knew were going to deliver. So when I came on to The Town, there's Jeremy Renner, there's Rebecca Hall, there's Ben. I knew everybody. And John Toll was one of our camera operators. Bob Elswit was our director of photography. I was like, we're in good hands. This is good. It was on the page. It was a good story on the page. Dennis Lehane wrote the book that was based on. You go, I think this is going to be good, and it was.
It was really good. A lot of the ones you pick are really good. Bad Times at El Royale, I love that. Great cast again.
Super fun. That was a bucket list moment for me. Not only working with Jeff Bridges, who I considered one of my heroes forever, but Cynthia Erivo. You know, I mean, you think that's right. You look at Cynthia, and it was kind of before anybody. I knew her from Broadway, but people didn't really know what she could do. And as soon as she opens her mouth and sings in that montage, you go, now people know what she can do. Wow. And she's on a rocket to the moon. Lewis Pullman was in that one too. We had a really great cast.
My God. And then you do comedy. I know you do Saturday Night Live. How many times?
Fantastic Four.
Oh, you're almost in the 5.
Almost. One away from a jacket.
That's fun for you, though. You get many nominations for, doing 30 Rock and these shows and things too. And on the other side, you've shown a real comedic style.
Well, the same thing. You know, it just works on the other side of the aisle as well as that is. If Tina Fey and Robert Carlock have a project, I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
And if they want me to do it, I'll probably say yes more than I'll say no. I mean, because you look at the track record. 30 Rock was, I think, one of the funniest things of the 2000s. Same thing with Kimmy Schmidt. You know, they've just, even if you look at their lesser hits, but Good News was a really good show. They're really good at jokes. And it's a hard thing to be good at. And Tina works harder than anybody. I love what she does. I love that she appreciates what I do. and asks me to be a part of that world. Same thing with Kristen Wiig. Kristen and I have known each other since SNL, and Bridesmaids together.
Yeah.
We did a movie called Friends with Kids together, and then she took some time off and raised a family, and now she's back with Palm Royale, and she's so good in it. So there's a lot going on that if you keep your kind of eyes open and keep your ears open, you can find yourself in some pretty unexpected places, and that's been my lot since Mad Men.
No question about it. You mentioned Kimmy Schmidt. Is it true that you knew Ellie Kemper as a student?
Yeah, she was one of my students.
You were a teacher.
I was a teacher.
That I didn't know about you, John.
Not only Ellie, who was in 9th grade, but her sister Carrie, who was in 8th grade, were both my students. Carrie's a wonderful writer. Ellie's a wonderful writer and obviously actor. I got to work with Ellie on Bridesmaids and Kimmy Schmidt. She's great. There was nothing more kind of lovely for me to do than walk on a red carpet and see the kid who I know since she was 15 years old do, a scene from Uncle Vanya or something in the middle of class and go like, now we're here.
That really is amazing. Well, you almost gave it all up, didn't you? At age, until you got to 30, you said, if I don't make it.
I gave myself till 30. I gave myself from 25 to 30 to kind of establish myself in this business and really be the benchmark I gave myself was if I'm paying my bills as an actor rather than as a waiter or a bartender or what have you, then I will, in my mind, have put in the work and done enough to have made it. Obviously, there are very, very different tiers and levels of making it, as you know, over the course of probably doing a million of these. But it worked out. I turned 30 on a movie. We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson and Sam Elliott, and maybe I can do this.
That wasn't your first movie, though.
It wasn't my first movie, but it was the first big studio movie that I did that I had any kind of... I had one line in Space Cowboys and Clint Eastwood movie.
And then you did Richard Jewell with him later.
Yeah.
All these things lead to something.
Well, and Clint doesn't forget. He's got a memory like an elephant. And, he said, "Oh, of course I remember you." I'm like, "No, you don't. I had one line. There's no way you remember me." But I'm sure he went back and looked and remembered me when he saw the because I made the movie. But if I wasn't good and if I wasn't prepared and on time and ready to go and all the things that I learned how to do over the course of being a working actor, I'm sure he would have remembered that too. And those are the kinds of things that when the second opportunity rolls around and it's Richard Jewell and it's much more of a co-starring role and I get to work with Sam Rockwell and Kathy Bates and the wonderful Paul Walter Hauser, you go, well, this one I'm going to hit out of the park because this I got something to chew on.
Yeah, it's so good. You give me hope too. I just did one line in the season premiere of Hacks.
Nice.
As playing a reporter.
Fair enough.
But, maybe I'll have a whole new career like Jon Hamm, one line, and then look at what happened to you.
Exactly.
Before we go, I have to say, in 2022, you did a hilarious commercial asking Apple, why don't you get a series? Because all those big stars on there that have series and things, why am I not on Apple? Was that something like a documentary or something? I thought it was always a joke.
It was meant to be funny. I was a little trepidatious about that coming out because I thought this could be misconstrued as me, sour grapes or what have you. But the way that it was handled, it was really the title was Everyone But Jon Hamm.
Yeah, it was funny.
And it was really funny in how it came across. I'm on 2 shows on Apple now, so it worked out okay for me. But that's really all you have to do. You just make a commercial and beg a streaming platform to hire it.
Well, it certainly worked.
It worked out all right.
Yeah. Make his dream come true. Watch your friends and neighbors because this thing is going to last a while.
Here's hoping. From your lips to God's ears, I really hope for it. And all I can say also to you, Pete, is I think I say it to you almost every time I see you, but it's a pleasure to know you. You've been nothing but a true fan and supporter of mine for so many years. Again, going on close to 20 now, that it's not lost on me. So I appreciate it.
Thanks.
You know it.
So I know talent when I see it too.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks to Jon Hamm for joining us on the actor's side. Again, your friends and neighbors on Apple TV+.